What's going on, guys? VZ Duelist here. It's getting pretty late, but I figured I'd just do a quick deck profile since I don't really get those going too often on this channel. Um, so, with me trying to build sprites and several different variations of it, I figured I still needed some cards. Luckily, I did get my third blue finally, thanks to locals today. But in the meantime, what I decided to take to locals today, as you can see right here, is Mathmech. So, I actually did very well with this deck today. So, I figured I'd like to share the deck profile. I went X1. My only loss was to base. So we will go ahead and just get started on the main stuff. So we'll start with the engine. So we got 3 circular, which is the most overpowered card that this deck could have ever gotten. 3 diameters, which was an amazing support card for it. That really helped it out. This card's absolutely amazing, and people completely forget that this thing gives an Omni Negate to an XYZ that uses a material. 3 additions because extenders, 3 subtraction because extenders, 2 sigma because extenders again. I am kind of tempted to do 3. I initially wanted to do 3. I've been seeing a lot of builds running 2 just because I guess to avoid clogginess, but admittedly I wouldn't mind running the 3 after today because if anything I ran into, it was either barely getting a Mathmech or barely getting one to special summon. Literally, my loss was to base, and game 1 was just all my normal summons. So 2 diameter, 1 Nabla, and 1 multiplication, and then some random card. But this is basically the baseline engine that you use. I personally might go with 3 sigma for the future, but for now, this build was absolutely amazing. It performs very well. I can go on with that later or answer any questions to maybe explain some stuff a little bit more, certain lines of play. And I tech in 2 Parallel Exceed just because this card is also an amazing extender once you start going into the link routes. Say that your XYZ plays don't really pan out. This is easily a card that just the link route overall is just a good way to get out of a tight situation where XYZs don't work out. But that's it for the monsters on the engine. Then we're going to go into spells. We do play, I will just put it right out there, 1 equation. This card is actually very gorgeous with the numbers on that monster like that. But this card's just a nice extender. Again, just being able to special summon and get a level 4 Mathmech on the board, Mathmech Cypers. And yeah, it's just a nice extension for when things kind of go down south or if you need to get diameter out some way, shape, or form. Then, of course, the 3 Signet Mining because, search cards are good. I did have a matchup where I had this negated, the activation, so then I activated a second one and just got circular and just went off. The guy was like, wow, I can't believe that you actually were able to activate 2. But yeah, this card's very good, of course, because, baseline searcher. And then when you pitch off Sigma, then you just don't care, which that was what I did that game. I see people playing Small World, so I figured I'd put the 1 Small World that I have just as like a tech option. It's, again, an activate once per turn sort of thing. So I personally don't really feel like running more than 1 anyways. Didn't see it at all today, but honestly, I didn't really need it. So that's it for spells on engine. And then for traps is God mode, revolt before revolt for Mathmech. This card is outstanding. I do run the 2 just because I run 2 of the Trishula card. because that card is just amazing, absolutely outstanding. One mistake that I did in the tournament though was I kept both copies in when I would be going into game two and going second. Big mistake because there was a time where this clogged my hand completely. So, what I always recommend when you're in game two or three going second, just only run the one because you want to see your engine. This is kind of the same setback as Revolt. Alright, so this is all going to be the rest of the deck. All the countermeasures for other decks. So, 3 Ash Blossom, given for this format especially. Card's just too good. Direct negation for whatever's going to be hitting it off big. Hit the Gigantic for sprites, so that way you can have your nibs. Hit tier elements like Rhino Heart, so that way they can't do the mills, their sends, get their fusion summons. But yeah, Ash Blossom's too good of a card this format as it's been for several. Ghost Ogre, I personally like this option just because of the fact that you get rid of some pretty nasty stuff that way. Um, Very good card this format. It just gets rid of a problem. And then for certain existing problems, you just kind of use it to stop it. It's not even just a monster stop either. It's Flandre's maps stop. I actually use this against a Fateful Adventure to kind of prevent my opponent from plussing on his turn, which ended up paying off very well. So this card's outstanding. One DD Crow. I know a lot of people have been playing like 3 in Mathmech, but I'm personally not a fan of it because it does seem kind of situational. I mean, it's good against things like Despia. It's good against things like even this deck where DD Crow will basically kill the point of this, especially hitting diameter. But I just don't see this as anything too crazy to be like banishing anything out of grave yet. Cure Elements could just fusion summon out of hand or field too, so it's kind of like this isn't really going to stop them unless they're really desperate. But it is still a good card. It does still have its place. It can still be used for things like Branded and Red, etc. Card's just generally going to be good. Um, Called by the Grave, it's a given. Don't really need to explain that because this just outs this, and then I actually use this against a totally awesome against a fish player in my round 2. So this card's just amazing. Dark Roller no more, 3 of those. Just because no forbidden droplets, and at the same time, this isn't really a deck that I can just activate effects out of grave like a Phantom Knight deck would do or something. So I don't really feel like sending cards out of field. And then, God forbid, I face Flandres and they drop Dementia Shifter, then it's completely dead. This card just says, I'm turning off everything for the turn. It's too good. It's cheap droplets for the time being. And then, lastly, for spells, I do play Triple Tactics, just because this is a monster effects format. You've got Sword Souls, you've got Branded, you've got Trigade still kind of shows its face every now and then. So Shurag, you're just again a monster effects format. So this card just undoubtedly can be useful. If it's a hand trap on your turn, going first, or your opponent's board going second. Um, just great card. It did help me out against Sword Soul. I basically baited out them using their Draco, the Tenyi, the level 8 Tenyi synchro, and used that, drew into the rest of my engine. So that card, it's good to get out of a tight spot. It's good to just push through whatever you need to do. And then lastly, triple imperm because it's imperm. You use it on the opponent's turn. You use it on your turn if you've got nothing else on field. So it helps kind of clear the way for your stuff to make room. But this deck just pushes through stuff a lot. So extra deck, we've got the one Lingeribo because extension into the link plays for Cyber's Wicked. This little guy right here. But then, of course, you have the Disciple and Devotee. You want those as well because of the whole link climbing thing and just kind of filtering throughout the deck. So, like, say that you drew two of the same hand trap, this helps you kind of go through and get rid of it. And then, again, this sets you up for the Wicked. And then, so then that's going into the link twos now. Cyber's Wicked, which is amazing because searches diameter, searches sigma, just searches any, an extra +1. And then if you can end with Wicked and IP Masquerena, then you can go into something else in your opponent's turn. And in my deck, I do run the Appaloosa that I've been seeing people play, which is very good, absolutely amazing. And the rest of the twos, Splash Mages is given because of link climbing. Update Jammer, I never really had to use it, so that's something else can easily take its place. Transcode Talker, link climbing, easy explanation. Appaloosa, for that exact reason I mentioned. And then, of course, the best cybers for this is Access Code Talker, as though this deck doesn't have its own boss on top of this one to just push through. So that's it for links. XYZ's is the Allenberdian. I don't know how to pronounce that one. This is the one that you use on your turn. So this one's a good one. Helps facilitate plays. The fact that it has the multiple effects and you get to even search out a floodgate if you want to is ridiculous. Of course, it takes quite a bit of setup, but honestly, this deck can just still mosey on through, even if you use a format. This. And then the God card, Trishula, for the deck, Lapellation. This card is just outstanding. Get diameter under it, and you've just basically interrupted your opponent horrendously. And if they play spells and traps and need to stay on field, you stop them even more. So then that's basically it for that. And then the last one's, of course, the big boss guy. Final resort. This guy will just push through even the biggest boards. Like, this basically pushed through a Dragon Link player who got the Boral and Boral Link. That's like Link 5. I forget its name. Pushed through that and Baron. That's basically all his turn ended on. So when I ended up going into this was just outstanding. It ended up being the 6K, double attack, double damage. This thing's just pushed through even harder than Access Code could ever do. And the fact that it's unaffected by stuff is just the safest thing against the card that I have in my extra deck, which is the Biru. This is still a special summon heavy format, so the Biru is a must. Even with sprites, right now everybody's still kind of gathering the cards, so don't expect to see too many sprites, but for now, even so, the Biru is still always going to be a good option, because again, you've got Tearlaments, they fusion summon how many times, you have Mathmechs that special summon how many times in a turn. All these decks just keep having to build up their combos through multiple summons, so the Biru is always going to be good. Ghost Bell, just in case I face Tearlaments, basically, and then just any other graveyard stuff. But didn't have to use this really at all today. There was a couple times I tried to put it in, but even then I was kind of like, it's not really worth it. Triple Cosmic Cyclone because back row hate and getting rid of Floodgates and pesky Mystic Mine. Luckily, I didn't really have to use this. It did kind of suck, though, because the fish player that I went against in their game 2, they established board with F0 and double totally awesome. I had the Dark Ruler no more. Their one set card was a Solemn Judgment. I had this card. It could have easily gotten rid of the Solemn Judgment, but they have Totally, which says no to this. So it really didn't matter. But definitely still going to keep that because Floodgates are a thing. 3D Barrier because this card is cracked. Ridiculous. This thing just wins you games unfairly. I can't even count how many times I just screw over a Despia player with this card and just by calling Fusion. Then their entire turn's done. Rivalry of Warlords because this deck is all Cybers. only card in it that's not is Appaloosa. So this is without a doubt a given for decks like Tier Elements and Tri Brigade and Based and I mean Dragon Links to an extent, but I mean this card's just universally amazing. I'm so glad I found this before I went into this tournament because this card is outstanding. It was going to be Shadow Imprisoning Mirror because of Tier Elements and sprites, but I didn't even face either of those decks either way, but still, Rivalry is going to be the better card out of the two. And then lastly, I put Summon Limit just because I was kind of rushing. This card is still pretty good. Super Factorial can still go around this, which is amazing because it's two summons. You're summoning the three monsters and then you're summoning the XYZ. So you can play through this, no problem. But if it goes back to your turn, then you're kind of stuck. So definitely better options, but this was what I put in for the time being. I didn't ever really run into my side deck because the deck alone was very good at what it did, especially for the matchups I had. So to recap with that, my game one was based. Game one, I went second and pushed through his board. Game two, he had like nothing, so I won. Round two, it was the fish link, and game one I had it because all he had was totally awesome Bahamut Shark, so that was easy to push through. He had some stops. He had like the Called by the Grave against my Ash, so it shut down his Ash when it came to my turn. Um, but so he kind of screwed himself out over that. But either way, I had so much gas that I just pushed right through it all. Then game two was that F-Zero double totally and set Solemn Judgment that I couldn't do anything about. Perfect board, nothing I could do to stop it. And then game three was just a blowout because Mathmech was able to go first and just completely go off and not care about anything. Then my round four was, I think, oh yeah, that was the Dragon Link. Dragon Link, game one I had that one. I finally got first. I got to go first. Had that game in the bag. Just kind of like a blowout. Game two, I think we went and he had it, or maybe not. I'm not quite. It's kind of foggy. We might have gone into game two or game three, but he made some plays. He didn't know when to really respond to my cards, so he kind of was like basically his last round or last game in that round was basically him not knowing when to time his hand traps and effects and all that. But I won. And then the last one was against Sword Soul, and he fought valiantly, but I did go first. So my board in the beginning for round one was ridiculous. He could barely play through it. It had the Wicked and IP and set super fractorial, just all the negatives and or all the minuses for him, all the interruptions for him, just everything for me. But I did like this deck absolutely. It was incredible. It performed outstandingly, but admittedly, I do see that right now as just people not knowing what the deck is capable of and what it does. So as time goes on, people are going to be learning this and knowing how to counter it properly, and then that's when you're probably going to see this deck really drop to its tier 2 status, while sprites and tier limit make their way to the first tier. But for now, it's like a 1.5, and it's a really comfortable 1.5 for the budget player. So if you can't afford sprites, you can't afford tier elements, this is a very viable deck to get. I mean, the most expensive card for the deck is $5. So definitely I would recommend, if you're getting into the game, if you are wanting to play the meta and you just don't have the money, build this deck. It's fun. It's amazing. Actually, I lied. The most expensive card is going to be the Access Code Talker. So that's really the only $50 card. You could get this for 20. So that's another kind of expensive, but as far as the engine goes, it's only $5 versus the $100 blue and the nearly $100 field spell for Tearlaments. But like I said, I highly recommend this deck. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want more deck profiles, let me know. But yeah, had a fun locals and everything was great today. So this is VZ Duelist signing off. Peace. Have a good night.